Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we're cracking open the career file of someone who feels incredibly familiar.
Right.
Almost like comedic wallpaper in a way.
Right.
But his actual range, his professional dexterity, it's kind of hidden in plain sight.
Yeah, it really is.
We are talking about Michael Ian Black, a guy who's somehow been both super niche and like massively mainstream for over 3 decades now.
It's a fantastic case study, really.
Yeah.
Professional versatility, especially in entertainment where careers can be, so short-lived.
Exactly.
Black's longevity is pretty remarkable, stretching from that very specific anti-humor of the early 90s right up to now, doing deep dive podcasts, literary analysis. It just defies easy labels.
Yeah, it really does.
When you actually map out his whole arc, ensemble, sketch guy, film director, famous sock puppet voice.
Can't forget the sock puppet.
Never forget the sock puppet. And then, writing these deeply personal memoirs, you realize he hasn't just, survived industry changes. He's often been ahead of them, or at least leveraged them really well.
That's the real puzzle, isn't it? How does one creative mind connect something like Wet Hot American Summer, that specific brand of summer camp satire, with these really serious, thoughtful essay collections? So our mission today is to unpack all that, look at the key collaborations, those surprising side gigs, yes, the sock puppet again, and really chart that big shift in his writing career.
Right.
We want to give you a clear but, really detailed picture of how Black managed to stay relevant, even deepen his influence across so many different mediums. So let's get into it, starting right at the beginning.
Okay, so Michael Ian Black, born Michael Ian Schwartz, 1971, Chicago, Illinois.
Okay.
But he grew up mostly in Hillsborough Township, New Jersey. Family's Jewish. Parents were Jill and Robert Schwartz. His dad owned a store. His mom was an executive. Pretty standard stuff on the surface.
Yeah, but the early years weren't exactly smooth sailing. There was quite a bit of complexity there, and you can almost feel how it might have, laid the groundwork for his later, more serious stuff.
Definitely. His parents divorced when he was only 3.
Wow, young.
Yeah. And shortly after that, his mother, Jill, came out as a lesbian. I mean, those are major shifts for any kid.
Absolutely defining moments. And then there's the tragedy surrounding his father.
Right. The death of his father, Robert, was particularly rough. He was only 39.
So young.
Yeah. And the circumstances. The sources suggest it was complicated and, frankly, awful. A head injury, apparently from assault.
Oh, my God.
And then a fatal allergic reaction during surgery afterwards.
Gee.
That kind of sudden early loss, it really does shape a person. And especially a comedic voice, It often gives comedians maybe the license to explore darker stuff, mortality, pain through humor, which Black definitely does later in his memoirs.
It gives that undercurrent, right, that touch of melancholy beneath the snark. But before that tragedy, there was performing. He went to Stage Door Manor.
Yes, the Performing Arts Summer Camp.
That place is legendary, like a breeding ground for young talent. He must have started building those collaborative muscles there.
Exactly.
Yeah.
That's likely where that ensemble instinct really started. But, okay, before we jump into the famous groups, we have to talk about the name.
Right. The name change. He was born Schwartz. Why Michael Ian Black?
It seems straightforward when you hear it, but it trips people up sometimes when they're looking him up.
Yeah.
It's actually rooted in, clarity. His birth name, Schwartz, comes from the German word Schwarz.
It means
Black.
Ah, okay. Makes sense.
So he chose Michael Ian Black professionally, basically, to avoid confusion with another actor, Mike Schwartz, who was already established.
So pragmatic, not trying to hide his background or anything?
Exactly. Just a practical move to carve out his own space. But by using the translation, he ended up with a name that's, honestly, pretty memorable and distinct.
Definitely more striking. And speaking of memorable, we absolutely have to talk about one of the most gloriously absurd early career moments.
Oh, I know where you're going with this.
He was at NYU for a bit, briefly.
But he dropped out.
And the reason he dropped out of NYU, it's just peak Michael Ian Black, even before we knew who he was.
He left New York University in 1991, mind you, to play Raphael.
Yes.
In the promotional campaign for the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles concert tour.
Just let that sink in. Trading an NYU education for a giant rubber turtle suit.
Promoting a concert based on a cartoon.
It's perfect, though. It tells you so much about his willingness to just embrace the ridiculous, prioritize the gig no matter how silly over the, sensible path.
And being comfortable in a costume, performing something fundamentally absurd, it connects directly to that anti-humor sketch stuff that came next.
Absolutely. That's the through line.
So, yeah, the Raphael thing was a weird, brief detour, but his real comedy foundation, that was built right after with The State.
Ah, The State. Okay, so critical. You really can't understand a lot of modern, quirky, absurd comedy without touching on them. What was their specific thing, and where did Black fit in?
Well, The State hit MTV from 93 to 95, about 27 episodes, and it felt pretty revolutionary at the time. Unlike, say, SNL, they really leaned into what people now call anti-humor.
Right, jokes that weren't really jokes.
Exactly, or bits that just subverted expectations, got really repetitive and silly, or just ended. No big punchline.
Yeah.
And Black wasn't just acting in it. The sources are clear. He was a co-creator, a writer. That whole environment was about collaboration, building these really conceptual bits together.
So it wasn't like he was a solo stand-up crafting a tight 5 minutes. His foundation was in this group dynamic, this collective creation.
Totally. Which explains why those partnerships lasted so long, well after the show itself ended.
Yeah, the collaborations with Michael Showalter and David Wayne especially, that seems like the core group.
That's the main thread through this whole period. Right after The State, you get Viva Variety in 97. He co-created that, wrote for it, and appeared as Johnny Blue Jeans.
Johnny Blue Jeans. Just the name is perfect. It captures that specific, slightly surreal, heightened reality they did so well.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And that sensibility got maybe even more refined, or maybe more concentrated, with Stella in 2005 on Comedy Central.
Right, Stella. That was him, Showalter, and Wayne again, based on their stage show, right?
Yeah, they co-starred, co-wrote the 10 episodes. It had this, intense cult following. People who loved it really loved it.
But maybe a bit too weird for mainstream back then.
Probably. It didn't get a second season. But even its failure commercially is kind of important. It showed how committed those three were to their very specific, absurdist thing, regardless of whether everyone got it.
But the project that really cemented their cult status, especially on film, has to be Wet Hot American Summer.
Well, absolutely. 2001, directed by Wayne. It basically created a whole subgenre.
Totally. That whole vibe of adults playing hyper-emotional teens at summer camp. Black played McKinley, right? One half of that.
Yeah.
Memorably odd counselor couple.
Yes, and his involvement there was key. What's interesting, too, is how he kept coming back to it. The sources mention he reprised McKinley for the Netflix prequel and sequel series First Day of Camp and 10 Years Later.
Which just shows how strong that initial creative bond was. He could always go back to that state alumni network. It was like a home base.
A very powerful career anchor, yeah.
Yeah.
Sticking with those collaborators paid off.
Okay, so while he's doing all this niche-specific, kind of low-budget absurdist stuff, he simultaneously lands this massively mainstream gig, like a voice everyone knew from commercial.
The Pets.com sock puppet.
Yes. It's such a bizarre juxtaposition.
It really is maybe the biggest contradiction in his early career.
Yeah.
From, 1998 to 2000, he was the puppeteer and the voice.
You couldn't escape that puppet during the dot-com bubble.
Seriously. And then even after Pets.com famously crashed and burned, he voiced the same puppet for Barnone Insurance, I think.
Yeah. Okay, but wait, how does that fit? Doing this huge corporate mascot voice. Doesn't that clash with the whole anti-establishment, absurdist comedy brand he was building? Seems like selling out, maybe.
It's a fair question, but I think the connection is actually in the performance style.
How so?
Think about the voice. Yeah, it was friendly for a commercial, but it had that distinct, slightly anxious, always very dry delivery.
Okay, yeah, I can hear that. It wasn't just generic happy voice.
Right, it was recognizably him. He brought that kind of deadpan, almost sardonic energy from the state into this super commercial context. He apparently described the job later as painful but fun.
Oh, that sounds about right.
Which feels like the perfect summary for applying, your slightly intellectual comedy chops to mass market advertising. It paid the bills while he did the weirder stuff.
And that dry, sardonic persona, that became his ticket to real mainstream visibility with VH1.
Oh, man, I love this series. He was absolutely everywhere.
He basically defined ironic nostalgia for a generation.
Totally. He got huge just making these dry, sarcastic, sometimes downright mean jokes about old music videos or fashion trends on I Love the 70s, 80s, 90s, New Millennium. All of them.
He was the king of the talking heads on those shows.
His timing, his delivery.
Yeah.
It just perfectly captured that moment of self-aware pop culture obsession.
What's funny, though, is how he even made fun of being on those shows while on them. He said stuff like he felt doomed to an eternity doing the series.
That's classic Black, though.
Yeah.
Maintaining that slightly detached meta-commentary.
Yeah.
Even while being incredibly successful within the system.
Yeah.
And he turned the sarcasm on himself, too. The sources point out he'd often make self-deprecating jokes about being Jewish American, sometimes kind of leaning into stereotypes, ironically.
That's a tricky line to walk.
Very specific comedic tightrope.
Yeah.
Yeah. Using irony to poke at identity stuff.
And while he was doing all that commentary, he was still acting in more traditional stuff too, right? Like showing he had dramatic chops, sort of.
Yeah, he kept a foot in network TV. He had a big supporting role on Ed, that NBC dramedy.
Yeah, Ed with Tom Cavanaugh.
Right. He played Phil Stubbs for like 83 episodes between 2000 and 2004. That's a long run.
Yeah.
And he hosted the first season of that hidden camera show, Spy TV, on NBC too.
Right, right.
But 2004, that was a potentially huge turning point that didn't happen. It could have sent his career in a totally different direction.
What was that?
He was guest hosting The Late Late Show on CBS, auditioning for the permanent job after Craig Kilborn left.
Oh, wow, I forgot about that. He was actually in the running.
He was a finalist. The job obviously went to Craig Ferguson in the end.
Imagine that alternate reality. If he had gotten The Late Late Show, would he have ever become the writer and podcaster he is now? The daily grind of late night?
Probably not. It likely would have consumed all his creative energy. So maybe missing out on that gig was actually crucial for letting him explore those other, more personal avenues later on.
Yeah, maybe a blessing in disguise.
Could be. And around the same time, he was channeling that dry, competitive edge into something totally different again.
Poker.
Celebrity poker. Right. Yeah, he was actually good, wasn't he?
Apparently, yeah. Not just showing up for the cameras. He was on Celebrity Poker Showdown like 5 times, starting in 2003. Played for charities, Endeavor House, Maisel.
Maisel, the Jewish response to hunger. Okay. And it wasn't just a quick appearance. It speaks to a certain skill set, right? Patience, reading people, calculating odds. That deadpan face he uses in comedy, probably pretty useful at the poker table.
A good poker face, literally.
Exactly. And he did well. Came in third in 2006, won $100,000 for his charity.
Wow, that's significant.
Yeah, and he got praise not just from the other celebs, but from actual poker pros and commentators. Dave Foley, Phil Gordon, Phil Hellmuth mentioned him. They noted his humor, sure, but also his actual skill. It kind of hints at that strategic analytical mind beneath the comedy.
So the mid-2000s, this feels like the next really big shift, moving beyond just being a performer or writer in a group towards being like the singular authorial voice.
Yeah.
First into film directing, but then maybe more significantly into literary essays and memoir.
Right. On the film side, he wrote and directed Wedding Days in 2006. That starred Jason Biggs and Isla Fisher.
Directing is a huge leap from sketch performing, managing a whole feature film.
Totally different skill set. Requires a grasp of narrative arc, structure that ensemble work doesn't always demand. And then a year later, 2007, he co-wrote Run, Fat Boy. Run with Simon Pegg, who also starred.
Okay, so he's establishing himself behind the camera too, but the writing, the books, that feels like where we really started to see a different side of him.
I agree. That's where the personal stuff, the complexity we talked about from his early life, the loss, the family dynamics, really starts to surface and inform the work directly.
His first big essay collection was My Custom Van, right? In 2008.
And 50 other mind-blowing essays.
Yeah.
But the books after that got even deeper, more personal. You're not doing it right.
Yeah.
Tales of Marriage, Sex, Death, and Other Humiliations in 2012.
Great title.
Isn't it? And then Navel Gazing in 2016.
Just the titles tell you something's changed. He's using that comedic toolkit, the timing, the exaggeration, but applying it to really serious stuff.
Yeah.
Marriage, death, just feeling inadequate. How did he manage that transition without it feeling, I don't know, jarring or overly sentimental?
Yeah. I think it's the way he uses that familiar sarcastic voice as kind of a shield. But the vulnerability underneath feels real.
Okay.
His whole memoir persona is built around willingly exploring his own flaws and failures. He plays this character of this sort of hapless, modern guy just trying to figure things out. Marriage, fatherhood, existence.
Like his VH1 persona, but aimed inward.
Exactly. The target of the satire becomes himself, his own anxieties, and that balance, that tension between the detached wit and the painful honesty. That's what makes those books work, I think.
And he wasn't just doing books. He started writing for, like, legit literary places, too. McSweeney's.
Yep, he has a column there called Michael Ian Black is a very famous celebrity. Perfect title.
So meta.
Totally. And he's written for the New Yorker Shouts and Murmurs section. Like that piece during the pandemic, a pandemic college essay that probably won't get you into Brown. Those pieces are important, though. They show him being accepted into that world of, contemporary literary humor. He's using his fame, sure, but the writing holds up. He's not just a comedian dabbling.
And he tackled politics pretty head-on, too.
Yeah, that road trip book with Meghan McCain.
Right. America, you sexy bitch. A love letter to freedom. 2012, what was the deal with that?
It was kind of a performance piece in itself. He and McCain drove across the country together in 2011. The whole idea was putting this, sarcastic, liberal Jewish comedian next to a very prominent young conservative voice.
Polar opposites.
And just documenting what they found, how people were living and thinking in this really polarized post-recession moment. It's kind of a fascinating artifact, using his platform to try and bridge that divide, or at least observe it honestly, while still keeping that comedic distance.
Okay, but maybe the weirdest, most unexpected turn in this whole writing phase is that he became a massively successful children's author.
Isn't that wild?
How does the guy writing about death and humiliation also write books for toddlers?
It's a totally separate parallel track, and he's genuinely great at it. His first one was Chicken Cheeks in 2009. And it wasn't just some celebrity cash-in, it got really good reviews. Kirkus gave it a starred review, called it a perfect collaboration of text and illustration.
Wow, okay, so legit skills in that area, too.
Yeah, it shows he understands language at its most fundamental level, and he kept doing it. A purple kangaroo, a pig parade, is a terrible idea, naked. Just a whole bunch of them.
He seems genuinely prolific in that space.
Absolutely. And then blending the two worlds, there was a child's first book of Trump in 2016.
Oh, right. That one made some waves.
Yeah, it perfectly combined his newfound ability to write simply and engagingly for kids with his established satirical political edge, using that innocent picture book format to land the pretty pointed commentary. It's like he took all that understanding of tone, he honed in sketch comedy and just applied it masterfully to everything: essays, political journalism, kids' books about pigs.
Okay, so we're moving into the more recent era. The rise of digital media, podcasts, established comedians had to adapt, find new ways to connect. And Black seems like he was pretty early in figuring out audio.
He definitely was. Podcasting let him tap back into that collaborative, improvisational style, but also eventually build this whole other solo, more intellectual thing.
How did it start?
Pretty simply, actually. Leveraging old connections. In 2010, he launched Mike and Tom Eat Snacks.
Was Tom Cavanaugh his co-star from Head?
Exactly. Pure, fun, low-stakes improv comedy, just them riffing on snacks.
Classic podcast premise.
Totally. Then in 2013, he teamed up with Michael Showalter again for topics. Back to the state roots, keeping that creative partnership alive in a new format.
So those first couple of podcasts were kind of familiar territory, loose, funny, conversational. But the really interesting turn, I think, especially for understanding his evolution, is How to Be Amazing.
Yes, that's the big one. How to Be Amazing is where you really see his intellectual curiosity take center stage in this era. It's a serious, in-depth interview show. He produces it with Jennifer Brennan and Mary Shimkin.
And he's good at it. Like, transitioning from comedian making jokes to actually conducting a thoughtful interview, that's not an easy switch.
It's rare, but he pulls it off. He manages to transform that dry, slightly detached persona into something that's actually quite probing and insightful as a host. He really listens and draws people out.
And he gets big guests, too, right? I remember hearing about him interviewing Katy Perry.
Yeah. That was for her big live stream marathon thing back in 2017, Katy Perry Live, witness worldwide. That shows you the kind of credibility he built across different fields. He wasn't just seen as the comedy guy.
Okay, so How to Be Amazing shows his breadth as an interviewer. But then there's Obscure.
Obscure with Michael Ian Black. This one is maybe the most surprising, intellectually ambitious thing he's done.
It's such a wild concept. He just reads classic literature aloud.
Launched in 2018. He reads dense classic novels aloud, chapter by chapter, and then provides commentary and analysis. It's like turning Cliff's Notes into performance art almost.
But with really difficult books.
Oh, yeah. He did not pick easy ones. Season 1 was Thomas Hardy's Jude the Obscure.
Which is famously long and bleak.
Extremely bleak. Season 2 was Mary Shelley's Frankenstein. Season 3, Emily Bronte's Wuthering Heights. These are challenging, complex 19th century texts.
So how does he make that listenable? Entertaining.
He uses all his comedic tools, the timing, the self-deprecation, the dry delivery, but applies them to the analysis. He makes it accessible, relatable, kind of demystifies these intimidating classics without dumbing them down.
So he's basically performing literary criticism, but making it engaging, using the fame he got from, Wet Hot American Summer and sock puppets to get people interested in Thomas Hardy.
Pretty much. It's this incredible leap. It requires serious reading, serious thought, sustained focus. It really confirms that intellectual capacity that maybe you saw glimpses of in the poker playing or the memoir writing. The detached comedy guy, that's a persona. Underneath, there's real curiosity.
But he didn't totally abandon TV comedy while doing all this highbrow podcasting. Right?
Oh, definitely not. He stayed very active. He starred as Bill Tundle, the clueless host in that great web series Burning Love.
Which was such a brilliant spoof of The Bachelor.
It was so good. And he created, wrote, and starred in that bizarre Adult Swim infomercial parody, Your Hole. Played that character, Randall Tyree Manderson.
Very weird, very specific stuff.
Exactly. And he did great character work elsewhere, too. He was Peepers, the super uptight butler on Comedy Central's Another Period.
Right, for like 30 episodes. He was fantastic in that.
And then, bringing things full circle in a way, when Reno 911 came back for its reboot in 2020,
yeah,
he had a recurring role as Captain Schwartz.
Wait, Schwartz using his birth name?
Deliberately. Playing the commander of this militarized parody of Hatzla, the Jewish volunteer ambulance service, it was this great little nod back to his roots, his identity.
That's fantastic. And now he's doing news satire.
Yeah. Brings us right up to today. Since 2024, he's been a regular panelist on the U.S. version of Have I Got News for You on CNN.
With Roy Wood Jr. hosting and Amber Ruffin.
Right. It feels like the perfect culmination in a way, that political commentary interest, the dry wit from the VH1 days, the analytical skills from the literary stuff, all coming together for sharp, timely political satire.
Okay, so just to round out the picture of this incredibly varied career, a little bit about his personal life. It seems pretty stable compared to the professional zigzags.
Relatively, yeah.
Yeah.
He married Martha Ann Hagen way back in 1998. That long-term relationship seems to be the bedrock, and obviously provided a lot of the material for his writing about marriage and domestic life.
Right, and they have kids.
2 kids, Elijah, born 2001, and Ruthie, born 2003. And the family lives in Savannah, Georgia now.
Huh. Interesting choice. The guy who built a career partly on dissecting and satirizing American culture settles down in one of its most historic traditional cities.
There's probably an essay in that somewhere.
Probably. And one last detail, kind of a subtle one, about his worldview. Something about a philosophical shift.
Yeah, it's nuanced, but the sources mention it. He apparently used to identify as an atheist.
Yeah.
Pretty firm non-believer.
Okay.
But more recently, he's described himself as shifting towards being a reluctant deist.
Reluctant deist. That phrase itself feels very Michael Ian Black.
Doesn't it? It suggests moving away from, like, absolute certainty or outright rejection towards something more like contemplation.
Yeah.
A grudging acceptance, maybe, of some kind of unknowable force or order.
Yeah. Skeptical but open.
Exactly. And it feels like it mirrors his career, in a way. Moving from that pure, chaotic, almost nihilistic anti-humor of the early days
right.
towards this more reflective, analytical, deeply engaged intellectual life where he's actively grappling with big questions, even if he's still wary of easy answers. Hashtag tag outro.
So when you lay it all out like that, Michael Ian Black's career, it's not some smooth climb. It's this brilliant, kind of amazing strategy of constant reinvention, constant diversification. I mean, think about the sheer range of contradictions we've covered. Dropping out of NYU for a Ninja Turtle gig.
Still amazing.
The surreal silliness of Wet Hot American Summer, then directing movies, writing these soul-bearing memoirs, and now, seriously analyzing 19th century novels like Jude the Obscure on a podcast he created.
The big takeaway, I think, and maybe what resonates most for you listening, is just how vital adaptation is, especially in entertainment today. Black is kind of a masterclass in it.
How so?
He shows how you can leverage its specific comedic brand, that dry wit, that perfect timing, but use it to explore real intellectual depth. He stayed relevant not by sticking to one thing, but by moving so fluidly between, lowbrow sketch and highbrow literature, commercial voice work, and political kids' books. His career basically proves that the skills you pick up in something like ensemble, comedy, observation, collaboration, finding your voice, can actually translate into almost any creative or intellectual field if you're willing to stretch.
Which leads us to our final thought, something for you to chew on. We've seen him do comedy, memoir, political writing, literary analysis. all successfully. So what does it really say about how we define celebrity now? When an artist can use the fame they got from being funny, from satire, even from absurdity,
Yeah.
as a launching pad to drive real, deep, knowledgeable engagement with complex sources, whether that's interviewing a guest thoughtfully or unpacking a dense Victorian novel. What does that model mean for the future of entertainment that's not just entertaining, but genuinely informative and insightful too?